Nick, let me tell you about Melvin Van Peebles, the director we're talking about today, and how I didn't know for the first probably 20 years of my life that he was more than just an actor. Because my only recollection of Melvin Van Peebles from my youth was him playing Dick Halloran in the TV miniseries version of The Shining. That's all I knew about him.
And all I knew about him is from his son, Mario.
Yeah, and then I knew Mario.
Because when the people younger, my age, or a little bit older, like, Mario Van Peebles. And then they're like, no, his dad. And it's like, what?
Yeah, I thought both MVPs were the same. Because it's just the first name starts with an M, Van Peebles. I just assumed that they were the same person for a while until I actually got into my film love decision. So today we're going to talk about the story of a 3-day pass. It's a Patreon selection for the month of February. So join us as we try to decipher the two MVPs and the older's first film.
Right, yeah. Let's get started.
And welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and thanks again for watching. Thanks again for finding us, and for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. Hey, we do have a Patreon. This is a Patreon selection. Look for that for some options to tell us what to do. And today we're going to talk about the first black full-feature independent film.
Yeah, story of a 3-day pass. And thank you again, Brian Eggert, for selecting this episode. It was one I was hoping to be able to take out of my sleeve and actually watch, and I have
you have the copy.
So. All right, story of a 3-day pass. Turner, a black American GI, has just been promoted by his racist captain and is given a 3-day pass for the weekend. Turner goes to Paris, where he meets French shop clerk Miriam. Their romantic weekend is interrupted by the effects of their interracial attraction and the concern that Turner's captain will learn of his time spent with a white woman.
Okay, there's a lot of content we can discuss about this, but what I want to start with is, in this movie, Melvin Van Peebles uses the double dolly cart scene, which is you put somebody on a cart and with the camera, you're pulling him, so it looks like everybody is standing still, and it's almost like he's just not on the ground, he's just sweeping in. That shot, as well as almost a dream sequence, it's in the bar in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Of everybody, he sees a woman and everybody clears out the way. That's kind of very dreamy quality, as something I think Spike Lee knew about, probably saw, and he uses in his own films. It's almost like his signature staple in all the movies he does. He did it for Malcolm X, though, when he's walking down the street, he's with that double cart where he's just standing on a cart and they pull it as he's filming and everything's going by. So it's called a double cart dolly shot, and it's not really, Melvin didn't really invent it, but he used it significantly, and it was started in the silent movie era, and now it's almost a signature for black exploitation movies.
Yeah, it's something that I know it's a completely different shot than the one that I remembered when I had seen it, which was the one from Wings, where all the people are dining and the camera's pulling back. It's a very different shot, but the effect was very similar. And it's funny that you mentioned Spike Lee, because I have to assume, and again, this is me as a white guy assuming, that as a black person wanting to be a filmmaker, the amount back then was so minimal. The amount of filmmakers that were predominantly black, or that were black filmmakers that were predominantly making movies people saw, was so
and you had to do it independent.
Yeah, that you had to kind of take from each of them and kind of use them as what you were going to be. And I saw a lot of similarities to Spike Lee's work in this film.
Yes.
I don't know if Spike Lee had seen it and loved it. I'm sure he did. Because it just feels like very Spike Lee-ish at times. But it's got a different tone. You know, Spike Lee gets a little bit harsher with his earlier work.
Very, very in your face.
He's very in your face. He's upset. A lot of his filmmaking early on was talking about injustices in a very dynamic way, whereas this kind of takes the tone of almost a romantic comedy, and then just hits you occasionally with the racial attraction and intention of what's being played with.
Right. It's more comedy than romance a little bit sometimes.
At times, yeah. And I think it's playful, even though it deals with some pretty heavy subject material.
And it's another thing that you will watch that Melvin does in this movie that you'll see a lot of other actors would do, and it's a very French New Wave thing, where it is you just cut and you're like, where do we go from here? Then you cut and they're just at a bar. Then you cut like that. Then you cut back. So there's a variety of cuts, almost like not a montage, but you're kind of dancing on it, or variety of takes of him. I'm just gonna go brush my teeth, and he's like, yeah, and he's dancing, and they trying out outfits and all that stuff. In reality, you couldn't. There's not enough time to do that.
Yeah, it's not like it's really not montage, but it feels like it is. I don't know what the term is for it, but it's almost like like we're doing that like Rocky IV training session if he had a conversation in between each of his lifts. It's a very different kind of a style that doesn't seem like it's really been brought into current filmmaking. But it's a very stylistic, enjoyable, and again, this movie just felt like it ambled along really quickly.
Some things that are really kind of slow.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel slow.
I never felt like I was waiting for what happens next.
Difficult for a French New Wave. You think it's like a dance party all the time, just go, 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 which this movie does.
Yeah, it just cruises. 87 minutes. It just went completely by. The only time where I felt the film faltered in its pacing, and this is the only time I think the film falters at all, is I just wasn't a big fan of the ending of the movie. Where it leaves
the trajectory
us, I
was like,
what? Okay. Because everything up until that point, I was going into that last 5 minutes thinking, this might be a flawless movie for me. Like, I have no issues with this movie. I enjoyed every part of it. I just felt the ending kind of was like, darn. Okay,
excuse my ignorance. I've never heard about this movie until you presented it to me. I've heard about Melvin Van Peebles. I've heard about his, badass song. But I've never heard about this movie, which is his first film.
Yeah. This is one of the things I like about the Criterion Collection, though, is I'm a movie collector, and I also those are very expensive. Those are regularly priced $40 a piece. Yeah. So when I see one that's a 4-pack of movies for $60, I just buy it, even if I've never seen any of them, never heard any of them, because I go on the assumption that company picks good movies. And I've very rarely been disappointed in that choice.
So I think the location is for two reasons. One, it's very hard for a black man to make a movie here in America at the time, so he had to go to France, which is a little more acceptable and tolerant. But if you want to do kind of a French New Wave thing, of kind of the now, you want to do it in Paris.
Yep.
And then you kind of play on the dancing on the cliche of everybody falls in love in Paris. But you have a 3-day pass, and he's going to break the rules. Yep. You just know the way, don't break the rules. What are you going to do?
Yeah, not knowing where the film was going to go, one would assume where's the stick going to break? Where are we going to falter with our rules attentiveness? I knew the film was kind of leaning in towards a romantic comedy aspect at the beginning, but it's interesting that Van Peebles left America because he could not get something in funding into film at the time. So he gets to France, starts working there, and I really like the fact that he's like, I've got funding for a movie. But I'm not just going to make an American movie with French funding. I'm going to make a French New Wave cinema style film that answers American ideals. And it's a dynamically different film than any other film about race that I've seen from that era. And of course, this came out, I think, a year after Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Yeah, so I was just going to bring this up. Which is a very fascinating movie. I have some problems with that movie. That movie was Sidney Poitier in another interracial movie, but the whole movie is to convince the patriarchs that it's acceptable.
Yeah.
Until the white guy says okay with it, then everybody's fine. It's like, what the hell with you?
That's kind of like how the birdcage is unaccepting of gays until the old white guy finally just says, we need the gays to help us out.
Very much so. So it's, even though it's forward, it's a little backwards, but it's an interesting movie.
Yeah, both of those films kind of play with the idea that we have to convince you that we matter. Whereas this is a film where we're on the cusp of we're seeing it from the point of view of a black man who's dealing with it. And he also, the sad thing about Harry Bard's character Turner is that he knows from the moment he runs into his buddies, this is a problem.
Yeah.
And it's you shouldn't feel that way with the people that you consider to be your friends in a sense.
They're going to tell.
Yeah.
So even with Sidney Poitier and Guess Who's Come to Dinner, there's a lot of this of projection or showing black men on film up to this time are very neutered, very almost background, very unoffensive, and we see that in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Poppy.
Oh yeah.
Which is sidekick to John Wayne. Very unoffensive. He's just the help, right?
Yeah.
Where here we have a guy who's not very neutered, who's got one thing on his mind the entire time. I want to look cool and I want to get a girl.
Yep.
And which is a very much. He's not neutered at all, which is very fascinating for a movie even up to 1967.
I like that. I'll challenge you a little bit on the full neuter versus half neuter. All right, because I think that he plays to what he thinks is acceptable, and he pushes the envelope on the acceptance in his real day-to-day. But then we get those scenes of him in the bathroom mirror, where that's the real him on the other side. That's kind of warning him, this is how this is going to go. Yeah. And again, it's a great shot, and it's a real great special effect for the time, because it's very convincing that he would be talking to himself in the mirror and responding. But I really enjoyed that. That's the full him in the mirror. And then on the outside is the him where he's he knows the rules. And he's constantly pushing how far those rules can go,
Well,
and that's what leads him down it.
What I'm trying to say is that establishing that's what he's doing in this movie, where something we never see. You won't see Poppy and Michelle or Vance do that.
No, you won't
mouth off to John Wayne in the movie.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So this movie has how you project it. So yeah, we talk about the duality. There's a dream sequence when he's at the bar, but he imagines himself going up and how it's going to play out. Talking in the mirror. But it also it's very, very, surprising, very symmetrical, very balanced, very centered. Everybody's kind of centered, almost like it's a television show.
Yeah, you can see that especially in their drive to the beach, where it's all focused on Nicole Berger's character.
Or his commanding officer.
Oh yeah, commanding officer.
He's yelling at the camera the whole time. I'm hoping the guy was standing right next to the camera, so he's talking to him. But
yeah, I was thinking of the opening, even going back to Spike Lee, of Black Klansman, where you get Alec Baldwin's character as the KKK guy who's like really racist and talking about the rules and stuff, and he's got that same kind of presentation. He's front and center. It's almost like a Patton-esque shot, where it's like, this is the person we're supposed to focus on. There's a lot of that in the film. Everything is symmetrical. It's a very clean-cut movie for what it deals with, and that's why I say it's similar in some ways to Spike Lee's work, but it's also very different because Spike Lee never dealt with clean-cut early on.
And I think you have to do almost symmetrical and very balanced because the content is so wow, but you want to make it a little more like it's almost in your face. It's almost like you can't like go away from it. There it is. They're centered the entire time. There's no way you can not see it. Yeah. So there's very little background. I think the bar is probably the most busiest scene, and that's not very busy as well. So there's not a lot of busyness in this movie. It's very much you're concentrating on what's in front of you. Another thing is very straightforward. Even the dialogue is very straightforward. There's never circumnavigating, you want to dance, it's pretty much straightforward conversations. I'm going to tell you. So pretty much very blunt, very symmetrical, very straightforward. I think it's what the movie has to be.
Yeah, and I think, going back to you said the bar being the busiest scene too, it really is, but when you watch how cinematographer Michelle Kelber, of course, places the camera, oftentimes places the camera as much as they can away from the action. Like the rest of the background action. Yeah. There's a lot of sequences them against the wall. And it's like, again, then we're like getting rid of all those obstacles in the way of us being forced to it's right. Like this is okay, deal with it. Watch it take place. I mean, that's really how it feels. Because you mentioned with Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, it's very much like we have to ask permission. We have to convince. Whereas this movie is very much, this is it, deal with it.
This is deal, and it's not a very political movie. It's just two people just want to have a good time and just enjoy themselves. And,
the filmmaking is the political part, not the story.
Right. And I think the people. I mean, she says it in the movie. I wish people just could be people. Yep. And just not have to be a big deal about what's going on in the world, right?
Yeah.
Especially for 1967.
Yeah. Well, she even like contests the fact when he gets referred to as black, and kind of given a stereotypical nickname by people that he doesn't even know, and she confronts with the question of like, well, is that a bad phrasing? Like, she's kind of like learning the steps
she's learning too. Yeah.
And they're both growing together, and that might actually help. That's what helps in a relationship, is two people growing together, and that's kind of what takes place a little by little throughout the film.
I'm gonna say this is not a French New Wave movie, even though it has elements of being it, because there's so many aspects of something you regard like. Like I said, Casablanca is not a noir movie, but there's so many aspects of noir in that movie that makes it enticing. But the other thing of a French New Wave is you go on the road.
There's a little road.
Little road trip. It's always a little road trip. Or, like you go out the street. You go out there rather than staying on a movie set. So a lot of French New Wave movies, one of the signature staples is get in a car and just go. Yeah. Yeah,
and even when they're in public, even during, what you consider to be more flashier parts of French cinema, when they're in public, they're still like in an actual like location as opposed to a set. It's a very celebrated, like, we're on location here. But I like that, it's like a slight road trip. There's a lot of mixing of genres here, and part of that probably comes with MVP being a filmmaker who's of an American background, making a film with French aesthetics. There's that very, like, blending. That's why I think the movie is so unique, is that it's a blending of so many different things, and you wouldn't expect them all to work together.
Okay, yeah, you're right, because I'm deceiving to say that's all influenced by French New Wave, and that's one of the things. But there is clever, also the symmetrical, very straightforward. Which also you put the camera on the ceiling for the hotel room, and you capture all that, which is a very very interesting viewpoint. It's very Alfred Hitchcock. He loved to do that.
Yeah, so it's strange that there are parts of that you don't even question. But you said Alfred Hitchcock. I never thought that we were in a thriller, but I definitely saw the aesthetics of what could be a thrilling scene. Like he plays with a lot of different things throughout the movie, and you don't really know you don't really know why, or why he's playing, but like you get the sense of the film from it.
Yeah, he wants to make everything right, and then I like that. Maybe we should do this. Maybe we should do this. Maybe I should rearrange this. And then after all that adventure, he just goes back to what it was.
Yeah.
All right, I fiddle with it, but maybe what it was presented, which is kind of a funny aspect because when Alfred Hitchcock does it, it's an entice drama.
Yeah.
Here it's almost entice comedy.
Well, and you can see I guess if you get that criterion set, this disc with this film actually has a couple of short films, early short film work from Melvin Van Peebles on it.
I know he did
it's
short
interesting
films, right?
to watch the 3 that are included in there because they're very different shorts that all feel like they melded together to make this. There's one about a guy getting out of jail and going to his daughter. He was getting out of jail because he was with a white woman that he wasn't supposed to be with. And so he's dealing with that in that film. And then there's one that has to do with day laboring, and it's a very like poppy, punky kind of a flavor to it. And then we also have one where the kid is trying to get a bunch of money out of a storm drain, and that's a very like story-driven piece. And you kind of get all these like these dream narratives, these almost documentary-style narratives, and then like a main focus story, and it's kind of just jammed together. And you can see a lot of those elements at play in the story of a 3-day class.
One of the aspects is that I was actually kind of surprised about when watching this is how much they're enjoying the being part. There's a lot of frolic, fun, smiling, having a good time atmosphere, which is when you think of romance comedy, you think there's something dreadful happening, but it is kind of a party atmosphere.
The only dread maybe is the ticking clock syndrome. I was constantly thinking
this
how much
has
time
to
I
end.
have left.
Right. This has to end, right?
And knowing, I guess, I had my now wife. I met her right at the end of high school, and we started long distance dating. So but even then, I wasn't sure that we were going to go long distance, that we were going to make it work.
Yeah,
so we had three months of summer where I was kind of like going, is this going to have to get broken off? And it's that ticking clock syndrome that really kind of increases the tension ever so slightly in what I would consider to be a strangely feel-good movie. But you don't get that natural tension. There's not another man or something like that that intersects into the story. It's just those slight building tense moments, like meeting his friends at the beach. Just slight build.
And that's a beach, okay.
Yeah,
that's a beach. Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of whimsy. There's a lot of adventure to this. Even there's a lot of people trying to be people. So it's political without trying to say it out in your face. But the deceiving part is they actually are. It's very straightforward.
That's why I say the filmmaking is political. Because watching the movie, you don't see it in that same way. No, I agree with you. We agree.
Right,
But the political side of it is the intention and is the filmmaking aspects. But it's done in such a subtle way that you don't realize you're being force-fed ideals. And I think maybe we see it now differently because this was 60 years almost ago, and so we can see the intention because of where cinema's gone from.
It had to be shocking to see a black man on a movie that's not neutered and he's not impotent and he's out having a good time and there's nobody really any friction in his way of just by himself out in the park, smoking and looking cool with sunglasses.
He's our lead character. He's dealing with intentionally racist people. He's with a white woman. There's all these moments where we can see it now. For what it is doing.
You're right.
But maybe it was that subtlety is really strong in the movie. I had such a great time watching it.
Yeah, it's very fascinating because you think, is this going to be a preachy? And it's not preachy. It's just a guy who wants to get a girl, man.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed, I enjoyed Nicole Berger as Miriam. She actually passed away before the film was released.
Finished, right? She was in a car accident.
So it's sad that she had this I would consider a big break in kind of this critically interesting film, this one that was going to test boundaries and push, and we just never got a chance to see more of her after the film. But yeah, 2 great performances, some really great chemistry in the film, and they also play off the kind of friction that happens at the early part of the relationship too. It's just a fascinating kind of character study.
Yeah, he's more of an extrovert. He's willing to take risks, and they're like, hey, you want to dance with? No. You want to dance? No. And then he goes up to her, and she's kind of very reserved, almost very introverted, but yeah, and how they meet is this awkward, and that's kind of how the spark. They're both kind of this awkward of, oh, my glasses fell off. My image!
Yeah, it's kind of, accidentally, butting heads kind of a thing. Yeah. And maybe it's because he's on vacation. I know I act a little bit stranger when I'm on vacation because I'm never going to see these people again.
Yeah. But then, Harry Bard, you will recognize him. He was in the original, The Italian Job with Michael Caine. He was the original. But he has a tragedy in his life. He went blind. He had glaucoma. That he went blind in the 70s, so you didn't see him after that for a while. So yeah, even the two lead characters have a very tragic ending to this, which makes it even more kind of a sweet kind of a thing movie to watch to know what happened to them after this movie.
We got to share in moments. You know, we got to share in the best of moments. Even with the slight friction of tension building. It was like, yeah, it is kind of a time capsule because we never got this before and we didn't get this after with the two of them. Or any further like large scale acting. But yeah, I remember reading about him in The Italian Job and then I didn't see much more of him in credits. And so I didn't know what happened, but that's too bad, yeah.
I didn't do enough research on why, but I'm thinking that he probably did boxing on the side. Probably as a catalyst for him getting glaucoma. So, yeah. Excuse my ignorance. I've never heard about this movie till 7 days ago, so this is new for me. But have you heard about this movie? Or Melvin Van? Have you seen any Melvin Van Peebles movies?
Yeah, I know he's well known for Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song.
That's what I know from him.
And the making of movie starring his son playing himself, Badass, from
Badass.
03.
That
so
was a good movie.
There's a good number of like that's where my mind was at with this as a filmmaker. I didn't know anything else that he'd done except for The Shining. So let us know your thoughts down below on the story of a 3-day pass. I think it's on the Criterion channel, or else you can get the Criterion Collection edition of this film set, which is fantastic. And let us know in the comments what you thought about the movie, and should we cover any other MVP Melvin Van Peebles movies, or maybe anything from his son Mario? Let us know down there as well. And thank you, Brian Agert, for selecting this movie. We have such great patrons that always pick
this
really
is why I like doing this, because
ideas.
you discover, you think you know everything and you don't.
Yeah,
because
I know what you're going to guess when you start picking movies, and you kind of know where I'm going when I pick movies, but
nice
being able to visit our patrons is kind of cool too.
And it's nice to watch a movie that I don't know where the trajectory is going, but that ending was a trajectory I had no idea.
Yeah, that went out of nowhere.
That went out of nowhere, which is really weird.
Yeah, so while you're down there too, as Nick pointed out, check out that Patreon list. You can join the Patreon for as low as $1, and at $5 and up per month, you can actually be on a rotation picking movies like we did today. And thank you guys for joining us. We always appreciate you spending some time with us for about 20 minutes, and go watch some more movies and get us back, get back to us with what you thought on them as well. And you can find my film reviews at gofilmreviews.com.
You can find my podcast, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts.
All right. Well, we'll see you in a couple of days, not 3. We'll be back soon.
Yeah.